The main character sits in the room at the computer. He thinks about living alone like a lone wolf. The only thing that adds color to his gray life is computer games, and he values these moments very much. In the end, he was transported to another world. Holding the controller in his hands, he calmly looked ahead, showing no emotions. Voices can be heard from the house. Someone is shouting at someone else that she was misunderstood, but she demands not to be lied to. The main character walks with a box in his hands, wondering if this is just an ordinary family quarrel. Suddenly, someone asks someone to come up, and then the girl falls down the stairs right onto the main character. This is the last thing the main character remembers before death. The boy is lying on the ground and looking straight ahead. The main character woke up as an old man, rubbed his head, and said it was painful. In front of him lies a decabon fruit with a hard skin but tender and juicy pulp. The old man was once an adventurer, but in the end he does the same thing, gathers herbs. Waking up in this body, he learned about the past of its owner. When he was a child, he was simply kicked out onto the street to spend less money on food. Upon arriving in the capital, he joined the Adventurers Guild. He tried his best and together with his friends went towards his dream. But all his efforts were in vain. His friends turned away from him, and eventually he was left completely alone. Even when the main character received the body of this old man, it was still difficult for him to get used to the local life. Since in his past life he was an ordinary office worker, how can he change everything now? Although it seems to him that some things here are already familiar. The main character looks at the joystick in his hands and notices a special gaming skill. As the name suggests, he can launch games at any moment, but right now he has only one game. This is a sandbox game where you can simply enjoy everyday life. There are many opportunities here. You can farm, fish, study alchemy, or create your own equipment. In this world, abilities are a common thing, but the old man did not understand at all how the gaming skill worked, so he hardly used it. He had already had to play games more than once. Of course, the main character was lucky to understand how to use this skill. He receives the royal mantle. But in reality, he still works, carries out any simple errands, lives in cheap hotels, and plays just to pass the time. That is how his last 10 years have passed. But one night he dreamed a strange dream where the main character rubs his eyes and asks, "Who else is here?" The boy thinks it is himself from a past life. Why is he dressed like a character in a game? Then he points with his finger at some panel and smiles, wondering exactly where he is pointing. The main character wakes up with a gamepad in his hands and wonders if he fell asleep right during the game. He rubs his eyes again and says it was a strange dream, but the place on the screen is familiar to him. This is the city administration. There is a trading post here. It was definitely right here. A girl with ears and glasses is sitting at the table. In this game, he can exchange items with other players. For example, if he wants to buy or sell something, he simply posts an announcement on a special board. Another player sees the offer, and if everything fits, the deal happens and both remain satisfied. But he never met other players in this game. The system just suggested choosing an item he wanted to sell, so the main character never even entered here. Finally, the main character dares to try. He uses the Apple selling function. The system offers the main character to set a price. The boy wonders how much a regular game costs. He decides to set the minimum price. In the real world, it costs 300 lin, but on the game market, only 30 lin. The system informs the boy that his apples are already listed for sale. The boy notices that now his advertisement has appeared on the board. He sells apples for 3 lin each. Then the system offers to buy apples, and the boy realizes that he himself posted the advertisement, and now he has to buy them for pennies, so it no longer matters to him. He presses the button on the controller. But he is informed that there is not enough money in the account. To pay for the purchase, coins need to be inserted. A coin slot appears in the center of the controller. Then the main character wonders what will happen if he actually inserts a coin and decides to do it. Then the system reports that the transaction was successfully completed, and an apple appears in the main character's room. He is shocked to realize that he really bought it. This was the brightest moment for him. He reaches for the apple, and a shooting star flies across the sky. He should have found out about this earlier, because the apple he bought in the game was the tastiest of all he had ever eaten. Realizing that he can buy in the game the things he himself put up for sale, he decides to go to the trading guild. The girl in glasses apologizes for the delay. She explains that she is responsible for buying and selling goods. Before buying anything, she asks to try the product. The main character agrees. The girl tries a piece of the apple and is amazed at how sweet it is. The boy understands that in this world most apples are sour, which is why she was so surprised. She asks the man what about this price, and writes on the paper 3,000 lin. The main character is surprised because, in his opinion, his apples cost 2-3 times more. She informs him that, unfortunately, they only work wholesale. As soon as he brings more apples, they are ready to buy them for 500 lin each, and he agrees. The next day, the main character brings a barrel of apples, and the girl is surprised that he came again, since he was here only yesterday. She notices that this time he brought a whole barrel, and he in response asks if she was waiting for him. The girl refuses. She hands him a piece of paper where the price is written, 25,000 lin. The main character is amazed. It turns out one apple costs as much as 500 lin. He says his name is Ahin. The girl happily announces that her name is Labelia, and she is gladly ready to cooperate with Ahin. The main character says he is glad too, and thinks about her name. Although he has long worked in the guild as an adventurer, no one has ever asked his name. The guild was only interested in the work done, checking documents, and payment for it. The guy was surprised when after so many years he heard someone call his name. Finally, the main character felt that he had fully become part of this world. It seems the main character handled everything too quickly, and now he is bored just sitting in the room. He thinks about what to do while he has free time. He sees this girl and thinks that this is a common situation on the capital's streets. They were simply abandoned. Just like that old man was abandoned once, and he still could not help them. But today the main character offers the girls apples and asks if they want to try. The main character asks how long they have lived here, if they have any place to spend the night, and if they really live just outdoors, right on the street. The boy thoughtfully tells the girls that they should then become real adventurers. They finish eating the apples. The main character sent them to the guild for registration, and meanwhile went and bought the cheapest equipment for them. He watches as they gather grass and thinks that although it is hard work for pennies, at least this way they can earn a living. So they can eat tasty and cheap, and also here you can rent a room. The main character wishes them luck, and the girl addresses him. All three happily thank him, and the hero realizes with surprise that these are three girls he had never even noticed before. The main character began to live much better, realizing what he was truly capable of. This week he brings apples. The girl thanks the boy for the cooperation. Previously, completing tasks in the guild and working as an adventurer, he could earn 7,000 lins per week, but now, thanks to his skill, his earnings have increased to 25,000 lins. He could leave the adventurers, but that is not like him at all. He likes to stay home all day and do nothing. Besides, he lives in the cheapest hotel in the capital, where the room is available only until morning, and to stay during the day, you have to pay extra. He is thinking of buying his own house, but for now it is better to save, because you never know when the price of apples will fall. If this happens, he will have to become an adventurer again, so he understands that he needs to go to the forest. Near the capital lies a large forest. Here you can often meet adventurers who gather medicinal herbs. A sack of such herbs costs 1,000 lin. You, of course, can go further into the forest. There grow rare herbs that can be profitably sold to alchemists, but there is a high risk of encountering monsters, and that is exactly what he is looking for. If he knew alchemy, he would earn much more, but in the game itself, you cannot create potions because there are no herbs needed for this. Usually, he sold what he found in the game, but what will happen if he tries to sell something that does not exist in the game world? He enters everything the system asks for. The main character presses the button and notices that his bag of herbs has started to disappear. There is a healing herb. He came up with a recipe for a simple healing potion and then sent the hero to the alchemy table. The main character creates a simple healing potion. He is happy that he succeeded. He thinks about where he can sell this potion. The minimum price is 150 pounds per piece. Healing potions are most often bought by soldiers, hospitals, and adventurers, but soldiers and hospitals usually have their own alchemists. He wonders what his visit to the guild tomorrow means, when suddenly he hears someone's voice. The boy realizes that these are the same three girls, gives them apples, and says he still has a few left, so they should take them. The main character sees this boy again, and he waves to them, thinking that he was not sorry at all to share. The next day the girl apologizes and asks the boy what he is doing here so early. The main character awkwardly smiles and says that he came to sell them weak healing potions. The girl thinks and says that before selling, an appraisal needs to be conducted. The boy agrees. She understands that this is really a weak healing potion. She's ready to pay 300 lin for one bottle and 2,700 for all 9. He agrees to these terms. That is, the price difference of a bottle in the game and in real life is 150 lin, and if you count all 9 bottles, it comes to 1350 lin. Considering the time spent gathering herbs, it is not that profitable. If he could grow medicinal herbs himself in the game, it would be much more profitable. The girl asks if he is an alchemist, but the boy replies that no, he just found the recipe and was able to make such a simple elixir. She tells him that it is simply incredible, so many years working in the guild, and finally their work has brought results. The main character thanks her, but thinks that it is unpleasant to hear such from others. Honestly, it was very convenient that the alchemists just in time mastered alchemy. Those who had long worked for the guild moved to work in the hospital. And due to the great popularity of the dungeon in the west, the potion supplies quickly ran out. So they will gladly work with him, and the boy agrees. It was a surprise for him to hear such gratitude. Now the main character needs to make many small elixirs. The girl says that he is very timely. He thinks that it is so easy to please him. But even if he plants all the beds with healing herbs, they still will not grow. He thinks that probably he should hire workers, but he knows no one in the guild, does not communicate with his old comrades, and only small children run past him. Poverty is very widespread in the world, so children are forced to work from a young age to help their families or not lose their homes. Most of them, like him, earn a living by gathering medicinal herbs for the guild. You can always take a risk, he addresses the children. One of the boys calls him old and asks what he wants. In fact, they are going to the guild, so they ask him not to interfere. For these herbs, they were offered a sack for 1,100 lin, but at the guild, they will give only 1,000 for it. The boys ask if he is really serious about this. So he buys 5 sacks for 5,500. Lin thanks him, and everyone joyfully shouts that they are lucky, now they will have food. He sees that there is no one around, takes out the controller. One small bottle of healing potion costs 300 lin. He will buy 60 bottles, that will be 18,000 lin. In total, all expenses amount to 14,500 lin. And the final profit of 3,500 lin, this is not enough, but you can't get far trading apples either. He knows that the gates to the capital close at night. The main character sits by the fire at night and suddenly realizes that he got so absorbed in the game that he completely lost track of time. He thinks about having a snack. Maybe he should try cooking food in the game. In the game, you can create not only items but also food, but the hero does not eat it. It is only needed for decoration. The main character understands that it is just a food mock-up, like in restaurants on display. But he still decides to try. He looks at the classic Asian lunch for 300 lin. Then he thinks he should get 2 more meat sandwiches, because 1 lunch will not be enough for him. The system asks if he wants to buy the classic Asian lunch, and the boy agrees. Then he looks surprised as everything he just selected appears right in front of him, along with chopsticks nearby. The main character wishes himself a good meal. He eats and feels the slight saltiness of baked salmon, the sweet taste of warm rice, and the delicate flavor of miso soup spreading over the palate. The main character recalls that he used to eat the same dinner often in the past, but back then it was not as tasty. The main character eats the dish, and tears of joy appear in his eyes from the taste. It is so delicious that he cannot hold back his emotions. He finishes everything to the end and thanks himself for such wonderful food. But the one who has eaten enough and thinks he is already well immediately hears someone addressing him. The main character is very surprised by this. He turns around and wonders what a female voice could be doing here at all and asks, "Who is there?" A girl in a beautiful dress with a fan in her hands stands before him. She smiles and asks the boy why he is so surprised. The girl confidently declares that she is the Grand Duchess Framery Levitonstria. The main character asks in surprise if she is really an aristocrat. The girl asks the boy discontentedly if he has heard about her. The boy feels awkward because in his entire life he has never seen a real aristocrat. The girl covers her face with a fan and says that she is the 3rd daughter of King Ru, the founder of the Kingdom of Belstein. She sighs because even the locals do not recognize her. The boy bows and apologizes to her. He thinks that if you have provoked the anger of the nobility, it is customary here to bow your head to the ground as a sign of repentance. The girl calmly asks the main character to raise his head. The boy thanks her and suddenly is very surprised. He notices that she has no legs. Lava tells the main hero that he looks uneducated, but it's okay, she will enlighten him. Her father founded this kingdom and lived here 300 years ago. The boy is curious that she is already 300 years old too. The girl replies that she is skilled in magic and knows the secrets of immortality. He jokes that she looks like a lick or a ghost. But there is no need to fear her. His life energy does not interest her. He is already too old for that. She is more interested in his strange skill and smiles with irony. The main character realizes that she did notice him after all. The girl asks the boy if the pure white rice appeared thanks to him. The boy confirms, and the girl happily says she knew it, after which she folds her fan. Seeing this in his hands, she hurried to start a conversation with him, because her father always dreamed of trying this delicacy, and an image of her father appeared in her mind. She turns to the main character and asks if he can prepare it for her. The man is very surprised, but after some time agrees and asks the girl to wait a little. After that, the main character treats the girl to food, and she tells him that he really has an amazing ability. The girl asks the main character to wait here and begins to disappear, which surprises him greatly. Then she returns, but without food. The boy realizes that everything happened very quickly. You leave the boy 2 beautiful round coins and say that this is payment for his work. He is very surprised by such a gesture. He picks them up and asks what they are. The girl replies, "When you try, then you will find out yourself." Leva tells him that it is time for her to return. If he does not want to get wet in the rain, she would look for a place to hide if she were him. She asks to convey to the king, the founder of these lands, the joy she had from meeting him. After that, everyone disperses. Difficulties with the terrain begin. The main character sits in the tent for a whole 3,500 ling and thinks that his profit from the potion has already disappeared. He looks at the 2 berries and wonders what to do with them, eat or try to grow in the game. But this is a gift from the immortal princess. He is even afraid to hold them in his hands, although it seems she did not mean harm. You think he might try to plant them, and the boy already takes the controller in his hands. He needs to figure out how his skill works and find out the minimum price of 1 golden cherry. Only 1 coin ling. The boy is surprised that it is so cheap. He understands that everything in the game is cheap, and generally agrees to sell this cherry. It would have been possible to set the maximum price and make a lot of money. But something tells him that it's better not to do that, not that it would harm him much. In any case, you can't call him a true player. He usually chooses medium or easy difficulty levels in games. He notices that something has started to sprout. He reads about medicinal herbs and realizes that they have given their first shoots. Maybe not everything is so hopeless. The main character thinks about what to do in life. Right now, his main dream is to improve his living conditions. He understands that even just selling apples once a week, he can gradually save money for his own house. But is that really what he wants? He begins to think about what else he would like. His armor is already ready. This surprises him. In this world, those adventurers who do not take combat tasks are called iron adventurers and are treated with contempt. He is exactly one of those, but in reality, there is nothing wrong with that. But neither he nor his grandfather got any satisfaction from this work, and all his efforts turned out to be in vain. The main character sits and suddenly realizes they both just wanted to be noticed. He remembers how the girl said that they are counting on him now that he understands how this ability works. Finally, the time has come to receive deserved recognition, because such power only adds to his confidence. He has no specific goal at all, so when he thinks about adventures, he immediately remembers dungeons. The rain continues to pour without stopping. That night, the boy dreams of how the old man first meets goblins. They were assigned to escort a caravan. The team included 2 experienced adventurers and 3 novices who wanted to gain experience. Altogether, they decided to complete the task, and after that tried to descend into the dungeon. Everyone supported this idea. Only in this mission was he like an unnecessary burden. Unlike the others, when goblins surrounded him, he couldn't take a single step. The boy asks the children if they are okay and if they can walk, and both answer yes. Then he reaches out his hand and asks them to stand up. Since then, they no longer communicated. He saw them several times in the guild, already in beautiful armor. This is how the division arises. Some move forward and others stay behind. The old man is very pained to see his relatives leaving him. Now he also has a heaviness in his chest. He begins to cry. But suddenly he wipes away his tears, looks at them seriously, and says he will show them something else. They are training in a room. The main character is breathing heavily, holding a weapon in his hands. Now he is on the training field of the Adventurers Guild. The boy wipes his face and thinks he needs a break. A man with an eye patch approaches him and greets him. It seems that once he himself was an adventurer, but due to an eye injury, he left this occupation and became a combat training instructor. He asked the boy how he was doing, and the boy was surprised by this. The point here is that the main character practices alchemy and buys herbs from local hooligans to brew potions. The main character realizes he has been exposed. He is not watching his surroundings, but he is actually being watched carefully. Since he is an alchemist, why does he need combat training? The main character himself does not understand this. He awkwardly replies that he just decided to remember his youth. He suddenly starts laughing, and the main character angrily asks him not to laugh at him. Then he apologizes and says it is too funny. Suddenly the door opens with a slight creak. The main character turns around in surprise and notices a blonde girl in armor behind him. The main character asks the one-eyed man who they are. He replies that he doesn't know himself, but judging by their appearance, they are definitely not novices. The boy thinks that a lot of money was spent on such a quality sword. Maybe she is from some noble family. He decides to give up as it does not concern him. After training at the training ground, he goes to the public bathhouse to wash off sweat and fatigue, and then heads to the hotel. The main character goes home and thinks about what to cook for dinner when suddenly someone approaches him. The children tell him that they gathered herbs today. He says that's wonderful and asks if all these bags are for sale. The children agree. He realizes that he cannot carry everything himself. Can they bring it to the hotel? They agree. The main character looks at the children and understands that they dream of becoming travelers. He hopes they will manage to find their calling in life even without this, but it is up to them to decide. He himself lives in the cheapest hotel. The boy lies on the bed and thoughtfully looks up. The fact that he was full of youthful enthusiasm does not mean he should give in to emotions. He recalled how a joyful boy told him that thanks to him, they were able to collect money for a rifle. The main character holds a gamepad in his hands and realizes that he wants to move forward. He is busy preparing potions, harvesting crops, working in the field, fishing, and other tasks until night falls. The main character looks out the window and wonders how time has flown by unnoticed again. While he plays, he could go somewhere in the city to eat, but he really doesn't want to get up, maybe buy something in the game. Recently he tried a classic Japanese lunch, and now he is already dreaming of tonkatsu. Yes, everything is correct. Mrs. Frammer gave him a golden cherry, and it seems it has already grown. The main character sees the golden cherry and realizes that the tree has truly grown. In just a week, it has become significantly taller than the apple tree. He holds a cherry in his hands and thinks there is nothing special about it. Just a cherry, only the berries are golden in color. He still decides to try. He feels moderate sweetness and a slight tartness spreading across the entire palate. He calls it tasty and believes that in a past life he tasted excellent cherries, and this flavor is very similar to them. The main character eats the second one and realizes that he was worried for nothing. Suddenly, he is stunned by some sound, and he freezes. He wonders what this deafening ringing in his head is and realizes it is the system greeting him. The boy gains 1 unit of strength to his attributes and acquires the skill of a day traveler, which greatly surprises the main character. He asks if this is serious, since vampires are called daywalkers. He realizes that this is impossible because he has a fang. The next day the sun shines brightly. The main character cautiously steps out of the house, holds his palm to the sunlight, and sighs with relief because it seems the sun has not become his enemy. He believes that most of those who walk during the day are vampires to whom the sun actually does no harm, so it means nothing, and also those strange fangs that sometimes appear and sometimes disappear. He understands that he will still have to go into the forest and definitely find Mrs. Fremery. He looks at the field and notices that there are suspiciously many people there, although due to the heavy rain, the healing herbs have started growing very quickly. Maybe that's why there are so many people there. The main character finds a place in the forest where they met Ari. He starts calling her by name, asks if she is there, and suddenly something unexpected happens. He understands that last time she came to him at night, so he might try to come again after sunset. He apologizes and wonders if she is really nowhere to be found. Suddenly, a girl with a fan appears behind the main character again and asks what happened. The main character screams in fright. The girl says discontentedly that he himself called her, and now he screams like a pig. What kind of attitude is this anyway? The main character apologizes, saying she suddenly appeared behind him, so he got scared. The girl decides to forget about this situation and asks why he called. The boy decides to tell her everything. She laughs loudly, and the main character tells her that it is not funny at all. Because of her gift, he became a vampire. The girl says that this is called the boundless love of God, and if you taste it, you can receive various gifts. The gift can either slightly strengthen the main character or give him some rare ability, but the boy wonders, how is that possible? After all, a vampire is an entire race, not just a skill. The girl replies that it will be difficult for her to explain everything to him. Before the girl's fingers appears a magical circle, which the main character looks at with surprise, and the girl asks him to simply accept it. Near his hands, some flashes appear, and the main character decides to ask what she just did. The girl immediately admits that she gave him magic, and this surprises the boy very much. The girl calmly asks the boy to say the word Otsinka aloud. She says that he will see everything himself. The main character agrees, stretches out his hands forward, and pronounces the required word. He sees on the table a chart with information about himself. Name, race, his characteristics, a list of skills, and 1 magical ability. The boy is impressed by what is happening, but suddenly everything disappears, and the girl decides to tell him something about his abilities. The girl suddenly laughed loudly and told Akian that they are worth nothing at all. The mana lasted only a minute for evaluation. She continues laughing, and it hurts the main hero to hear this. She asks if he notices that he still treats people in a special way, and everyone considers his vampire abilities just skills. She suddenly becomes serious. The girl confesses to the boy that he has no reason to worry at all. The boy looks at her in surprise. The main hero will no longer have to live only at night and feed on blood alone. He finally felt relief. If so, then he will no longer have to strain all day and will be able to eat normally. The girl tells him, "If you eat now, could you also treat my father?" The main hero agrees. Kian prepares lunch with tonkatsu, and the girl asks to consider her advice and kindness. As payment for half the dish, the main hero unexpectedly learns about this and is very surprised. She asks the boy to train hard, develop his body and spirit, and says that someday he will be able to enter her circle. Then she disappears, and the main hero realizes that he seems to have created problems for himself. The main hero also noticed that after Lady Frommery left, everything became like before again. The main hero tastes the dish and says it is very delicious. He enjoys the tender pork alone under the sound of rain. And so his life began to return to its usual course. Thanks to the golden cherry, his stats gradually increased, but he still could not match the instructor. The boy looks at his cool stats and thinks that he has already become strong. The main character didn't even think he would become so strong. He was just trading and eating cherries. And then someone apologizes and asks for a minute of his time. A girl in armor shows a wanted poster and asks the boy if he has seen this person. The boy recognizes that this woman had recently come to them. He is surprised that there is such a big reward for her head and so many zeros. He is stunned when he realizes that it is about 5 million. The girl asks the boy if he has seen him, but the main character denies it and explains that he was just surprised by such a large reward. The girl says she is ready to pay any amount of money just to find him, and so that he remembers her face well. The main character thought he had seen him somewhere before, or maybe not. She orders to bring him to her, alive or dead. She's ready to pay generously for any information about this man. He asks what he did that she is looking for him so much. The girl starts to get angry and admits that this man killed her older brother. The main character gladly understands the girl and says, "That's it, their conversation is over." The main character says he is scared. He thinks about revenge for his brother, as if reliving the plot of a historical novel. In his past life, he was lonely, with no one to talk to. In his new life, he also has neither family nor friends. Therefore, he feels no attachment to anyone. Maybe he should also get close to someone, but looking at her sad face, the thought arises that it probably makes no sense. And who would want to get involved with an old man like him anyway? To distract himself from these thoughts, he went to look at the order announcements on the board. There may be many tasks, but essentially everything boils down either to gathering something or helping with cleaning. He also wants to take orders for escorting or destroying monsters in the dungeon, but for now, he is not strong enough for that. A familiar person approaches the main character and asks if he is looking for work. He says he hasn't seen him for a long time. The boy is confused, and the acquaintance asks if he remembers him. Suddenly, the main character remembers the Windblade. Long ago, he worked part-time in this group of adventurers, helping to carry equipment and trophies. He asked them if they had returned from the dungeon. The blonde boy confidently replied that they had. In general, they decided to take an easier job. Although the pay is low, at least they can rest a bit. He thinks about taking this and dividing it among 5. Each will get 9,000 lin, and they need to escort a caravan. They tell the main character that he is cautious, so they offer him to go with them but warn that there will be extra pay for dangerous conditions. The main character understands what they want from him. They lack people, so they want to take him too. He thinks they approached him only because they had worked together before. Otherwise, they would probably have chosen a stronger adventurer, and because of this, he has mixed feelings. Of course, he could just sit quietly and earn money from sales, but he still wants to test his skills in practice, especially since he is not going on the mission alone, so he agrees to go with them. The boy says he will later inform the administrator that they are taking this order. The main character thinks this is easy money, since 9,000 just for escorting with strong fighters is a very profitable offer. They agree to meet tomorrow morning near the gates, say goodbye, and wave to each other. But before leaving the city, it is worth selling the new goods at the trade guild. The main character brings cherries and asks what they think about them. The girl with glasses says she is ready to buy one bunch for 2,000 lin. The main heroine is shocked because this is 4 times more expensive than apples. The girl secretly tells him that his apples are very popular among the nobility and merchants. She assures him that the grapes will really overturn the market. The main character understands this well. The girl says goodbye to the main character. he realizes that his apples are bought by people from high society. After that, he left, bought food, supplies of medicinal herbs, and warned that he would not be in the city for some time. He prepares a combo set for himself: hamburger, French fries, and cola. Now he feels that he can rest peacefully. He drinks cola and thinks about how tasty harmful fast food is, especially if he hasn't eaten it for 10 years. But it's better not to boast about this and not eat such things among people. He finishes his drink and hears some sounds, thinks that probably the girls have already returned, and it seems, started copying books on order. In this world, few books are printed, so they cost a fortune, and that is why copyists are paid well. He himself tried to remember at least something in the local language, but the old man couldn't even read well. The main character suggested to the girls to try other tasks, test their skills, and when they were assigned to copy a book, he was very proud of them. The boy believes that now he is fully ready for tomorrow. In the game, the hero can create weapons and equipment for other characters who travel. They kill monsters and bring him materials from which he can create new things. Over the last few years of the game, he has gathered a whole pile of excellent gear. What awaits him on this journey is unknown, but there is no point in carrying two rare items with him. It's enough to take reliable equipment that will help survive. He says that everything is already ready. Before sleep, he will eat golden vision. As always, he does not like that sound in his head when he eats it. After he ate it, he decides it's time to sleep. In the morning, he comes to the meeting and addresses him. He is told that he has good armor, and the main character thanks for the compliment a little awkwardly. The man suggests going to the caravan, and the main character agrees. The boy reports that here it is. The caravan consists of 2 wagons. The main character notices that the emblem looks like a familiar store. Usually the caravan carries many goods to another city, but they have only 1 barrel. The blonde boy tells the coachman that today the group Wind Blades will accompany them. The coachman replies that they were exactly waiting for them. He says that since they are already here, they can go. They can sit in the carriage. The man thanks the coachman. The main character is still wondering why hire a whole group of adventurers to transport 1 barrel. What's so special about it? Suddenly the coachman notices something and asks Ahyeon if it is really him. He adds, "Do you remember me? I am Vizar." The main character realizes with surprise that Vizar is his comrade, or rather, former comrade. After that escort mission of the caravan, Visa gains success as a young adventurer. Why is that? The boy asks Visa what she is doing here. The boy tells that many things happened to him, shows his prosthetic leg, and says that now he can no longer be an adventurer with someone like him. The irritated man shouts at them to be quiet because time is money, and they smile in response and apologize. He orders the main character to go to the carriage. The hero agrees to obey the order. The main character thinks that Vizar left the adventurers because he lost his leg. They set off on the road. The main character rides in a carriage and observes everything around. Someone tells him that he doesn't need to worry so much about it. They tell him that they seem to know this one-legged taxi driver. The main character realizes that this is the same archer from Blade of the Wind and responds affirmatively. The archer shows the main character his hand and asks him to look. During a battle in the dungeon, he lost all the fingers on his hand. For an archer, the most important thing is the fingers. He spent all his savings to put them back in place, but not every adventurer can afford that. He was also lucky to find a job. The archer says that many people become disabled after underground expeditions. This is a typical situation for adventurers. The main character understands that they are trying to cheer him up. He says that he still envies them a little because they can go down into the dungeon. Those are incredible experiences. The archer smiles and says that he speaks like a little child. The main character laughs in response. In fact, when he saw such a visor, it stunned him. He felt how great his possibilities could be and realized he did not want to stop, even if it seemed childishly naive. But he wants to see this world with his own eyes, so today they will stop here to rest. Having pitched the tent and eaten their rations, they began to divide the watch shifts. The blonde boy asks if they will stand guard from night till morning, and everyone agrees with him. The main character reflects that even if goblins come down from the mountains, monsters are not the only problem, and one must watch out for more than one danger. This wisdom was taught to him by an experienced traveler with whom he went on that expedition. He asks to remember this well. When you go out through the city gates, rely on all your senses: sight, hearing, and smell. The main character is offered to raise his head and look where he is, and the boy agrees. The main character turns away, hears some sound, and wonders what this strange noise is. He realizes that he was pushed exactly there. The boy looks at the bushes, where suddenly a paw with claws appears. There are already several creatures with pointed ears and long noses. The main character understands that these are goblins. He shouts that there is an alarm. Goblins are already in the camp. The commander orders the adventurers to take up arms. The main character thinks about the fact that he has never killed monsters before. But now he has no choice, he will have to kill. He grips his weapon tighter. One of the goblins rushes at him with a scream. Then the main character manages to wound the goblin, and he realizes what he has just done. After that, several more goblins approach him, and the main character irritably realizes that he is surrounded. Suddenly an arrow hits the goblin's head. The main character reacts with surprise, and the archer smiles and tells the boy that he is doing well. After that, the archer smiles and tells the main character that he will support him. The main character asks in surprise where all the others have gone. There are plenty of goblins here. How can he cope alone? The archer understands that the situation is really difficult. But it's better not to get distracted, because a few more goblins appear, and the boy swears again. They defeated all the goblins, and the main hero got tired. The archer tells him that he did well. The boy happily says that it's good that everything is already behind. The shooter replies that, unfortunately, this is only the beginning, and points to the crowd of goblins. The light-haired boy holds a sword, looks ahead, and asks if they killed them all. But it seems to them that a few goblins escaped exactly there. The boy says they need to catch up with them, but it all seems strange to him. The main hero finds it very strange. Usually goblins attack in groups of 10, but this time there were many more. Someone turns to him. He is explained that they are paid extra not for nothing. The job is really dangerous, and besides goblins, there are other threats here. The main hero suspects that monsters are deliberately preparing an attack on their camp. The boy tries to understand who it could have been. He hears something and realizes it was just Vizar's voice. Then he hears a cough and thinks someone was attacked. The main hero approaches the wagon and addresses Vizar, noticing a man with a hidden face next to him. The main hero orders him to immediately step away from Wiser. He realizes that someone really planned the attack. Someone outside understands that screams are coming from the wagon. They need to get there quickly. The stranger is angry about this. After that, the boy quickly jumps toward the forest. The blonde orders him to stop. The archer asks the boy if he is alive, but the main hero says that it is more important now to find out if Vizar is alive. He shows his hand and says that he is fine. He only took a blow to the chest. He will live. And the monster attack was organized by some strange man, and it was all just because of some barrel that would have been stored there anyway. But the main character thinks it's better not to know this, otherwise it will only add problems. A simple task to escort someone turned into a real trial. After the goblin attack, their group became more cautious, but they reached the needed place without incidents, and they were told that he helped a lot. They tell him that if some work appears, they will definitely let him know. The main character smiles in response and waves his hand at them. Then he looks at the paper and thinks that he might exchange this check at the guild. He didn't even suspect that the risk bonus would be so big when suddenly someone approaches him. Vizar approaches him and suggests drinking together. The main character is surprised by his appearance. The main character says that he no longer plays, says goodbye to Vizar, but wants to say something more to him. Vizar puts his hand on his heart and asks Akihan if he is still angry at them. The main character thinks about the offense and wants to say that it is already in the past, but decides to answer differently. The boy tells Vizar that he is actually glad they parted ways then. After that, Akon leaves, and Vizar stands in shock watching him. These are Stens in shock, and he realizes that they themselves left him, so everything is fair. Someone approaches him and asks if he is Vizar, and if he can answer a few of their questions. Vizar realizes that he is to blame himself because he thoughtlessly followed that trail. It's good that they parted ways. Now he won't have to go through the same as the others. The main character learns that his total reward is 14,000 lin. He takes the bag of money in surprise. From the total reward of 9,000 lin plus 5,000 for dangerous conditions, and considering the return trip, he earned 2,300 lin per day. From a financial point of view, such orders yield more profit than selling herbs or food, but the risk of dying is not worth it at all. If he wants to earn more, he will have to complete tasks from monsters or descend into dungeons. But is he ready to risk everything for money? He holds the coin and understands. Adventurers risk not only for money. In this case, the main character wonders why he even wants to become an adventurer. The main character understands that money is important for a comfortable life, but if you only chase profit, you can lose the true joy of life itself. The boy clenched his fist. He wants to enjoy adventures, not just seek benefit. So his first goal is to send him on a safe and simple journey, if that is even possible. At first he needs to find a carriage that will take him to the capital. Behind him, a girl addresses him. She tells the main character that some very important person wants to meet him. The boy is very surprised by this. After some time, he finds himself in front of the girl who gave him the golden cherry and awkwardly lowers his eyes. The main character awkwardly addresses Faramara and asks what she is doing here. In fact, she has a request for him. The girl asks him to take something to a certain place, she will say. He no longer likes how she phrases it, and even if she asks again, he is no longer sure he can do it. Ari points at him with her finger and reminds him that he owes her. It seems she shared a useful spell with him. She talks about entrusting something truly valuable, something really important, and she can rely only on him. She believes that with his level it won't be difficult, or he just wants her to see for herself how much stronger he has become. The boy understands that the girl has already guessed. He started growing golden cherries. He admits that he is not sure if he can handle such a serious matter. She calls him stubborn. Someone addresses the girl and begins to tell her something, while the boy sits in front of them. Then Ari stands up, takes her fan, and decides to act. If she manages to complete the task, her rating will rise from iron to bronze. There are 4 ranks for adventurers: gold, silver, bronze, and iron. Given his weakness, he did not even dream of promotion. He says it is a great honor for him, but he is not sure he has enough strength to move to the next level. The guild leader tells him that raising his rank is not a problem if he completes the task, and the boy understands that he himself will also take part in it. The girl turns to Akihan and with an angry expression says that if he refuses now, she will not be able to show him leniency. The main character agrees to carry out her order. The boy walks away dissatisfied and says that Framer insisted he get there on foot. This is real torture for old bones. The task is actually simple. You need to deliver an egg to a certain mountain. He was told that this egg belongs to the Dragon Lord, about whom old legends are told. It seems someone stole this egg from the nest. After long and exhausting searches, the egg was finally returned. It needs to be put back in place, but doing so is not easy. A mysterious group of mercenaries is hunting the egg. Therefore, they chose several fake couriers, and he did it to confuse those who were pursuing. But why would the country try so hard to get some egg back? Ari told him a story in response to this question. Once long ago, when the kingdom of Belstein was still very small, it was suddenly attacked by the Dragon Lord, whose eyes burned only with rage. The founder of the kingdom, Ru, fought the dragon for 3 days and eventually defeated it. However, King Ru decided to spare the Dragon Lord and did not kill him. Later, it turned out that the Dragon Lord came to take revenge on the kingdom because someone from the inhabitants of Belstein had desecrated the remains of his relatives. Hearing the true reason for the anger, Ryu suggested finding the culprit and punishing him according to the law. But if someone offends his relative, he will deal with it himself, and if his relatives hurt someone, then let them resolve it themselves. Thus King Ru and the Dragon Lord came to an agreement between themselves. After that, the dragons no longer troubled these lands. Although both sides suffered losses, these trials made them stronger, as her father said, after the rain, the earth becomes stronger. Here the main character realizes that the ancestor of the entire kingdom was Japanese. Any difficulties on their path only make them stronger. This is a Japanese proverb. Now it becomes clear why the king wanted rice so much. The ruler of the whole country had a mortal but very beautiful daughter and a whole heroic story. Although they lived in the same world, their fates turned out differently. The boy continued to climb the mountain with envy. The main character goes further. He has already been on the road for 2 days. He cannot shake the feeling that someone is watching him. The main character realizes that he is very tired and decides to sit down and rest, despite what he was told. In fact, he did not feel tired at all. Thanks to the skill of a day traveler, he did not want to sleep and could manage without rest. Moreover, he could sense if someone was nearby. He wants to finish this as soon as possible because besides delivering the egg, he was given one more task. Mekyon was supposed to act as bait for the killers from the criminal organization who wanted to seize the egg, and then the knights were to arrest the attackers and interrogate them. But he is still worried. He does not feel knights nearby. In fact, the killers could not get rid of them. He is just psyching himself out. This feeling does not leave him even when he approaches the foot of the mountain. He lifts his head and realizes that he would have spent much more time on the road before, but thanks to eating golden cherries every day, it brings him its advantages. The main character is confident in his current traits and understands that although they have slightly improved, he still has no luck with fortune. Suddenly 2 armed boys approach him. One of them, holding a sword, says to Akihan, "If you don't want to die, give up everything in your bag." The main character suddenly realizes that a bounty has been placed on him. He remembers seeing himself last night in a carriage. His partner jokingly calls him the famous Bloody Blade, and the hero asks him to be quiet. The boy is amazed because he realizes that Ben is the name of his former comrade, the strongest of all. Could it really be him? The main character thought he had become the strongest adventurer, but now it became clear who he really had become. Suddenly, Akiana is shocked by something, and at that moment Ben strikes him with a sword and tells him to be silent. The boy angrily tells the main character that he knows nothing about him, but suddenly something unexpected happens. The main character falls to the ground, and Bana's partner asks if he killed him. He agrees and suggests taking the egg and leaving. They have already killed those who were in armor, but that does not mean no one else is watching them. They open the bag and see only grass inside. They realize they were deceived. He looks weak, but still reached the mountain faster than everyone else. Ban reports that he was completely useless and remained so. It was foolish to think he was entrusted with anything valuable. By the way, rumors say he started selling medicinal potions. Ben understands this and says that he was just curious why he has such a good leather armor. But he could have just sat there mixing his herbs. But no, he attacked the hero, and that is what doomed him. The boy laughs and suggests moving on, since they still need to look for that egg. The system reports an emergency situation. The skill of the day traveler activates automatically. Suddenly, the main hero moves his hand, fangs appear, and he declares that he craves blood. The killer irritably said what was already obvious. The one they were chasing had nothing on him. One of the killers, shocked by the complete failure of their mission, exclaimed with bitterness and distrust. He was outraged that they had spent so much effort, but in return received only salt and some key from this person. The excited man emotionally accused the other, insisting that if the egg had been stolen, there would have been no problems. He placed all the blame on Vizar, saying that he told everything, got scared at the last moment, and tried to stop him. The interlocutor responded with cold sarcasm, hinting that the bloody blade has been very unlucky lately. He had not yet finished saying the last word when his head suddenly disappeared from his shoulders. Bloody Blade Bend looked at what was left of his interlocutor. His gaze became empty, and his pupils narrowed. All he managed to do at that moment was to ask one question. Kian's response turned into outright mockery. He laughed loudly, mockingly asked what happened to the boy's face, and contemptuously called him a bad person. The main hero continued to feign surprise, and asked if his opponent even understood what a bad person is. The former comrade, barely restraining his rage, could barely shout a threat in response. Ahian finally stopped pretending to be polite. He said directly that he sees before him a person who blames others for their failures, although in reality they are up to their ears in their own problems. Hearing this last insult, the young man could not hold back and exploded. He shouted angrily that he would cut off his head right now, adding with fury that such a monster had no place teaching him at all. In response to the malicious attack, the mocker only sneered contemptuously and sarcastically asked what exactly his opponent intended to do, insisting that he repeat his words. The experienced man, no longer holding back his anger, tried to shout something and launched an attack using a combat technique called instant step. The warrior reacted instantly and with a smirk, as if mocking the opponent's confusion, sarcastically asking if he was not going to flee at such an important moment. The enraged warrior shouted at the insolent one to be silent. He added indignantly, "Could it be that the bloody sword is really afraid of some miserable wretch?" The mocker replied that the young man was actually to blame because he simply gave up and lowered his hands. Adding with irony, he said he could not even imagine how difficult the path to the top of power or success is. The former comrade continued his story, explaining that to survive, sometimes one has to do the hardest and most unfavorable work just to somehow make a living. He emphasized that even a single mistake on this path can be fatal, costing a career or even life. The hero was interrupted by the main character, who decided to finish his emotional long story himself. Akon said coldly and indifferently that he was not interested at all in this whole male drama. He wanted to say something else, but before he could even think, the main character interrupted him. Akiyuan replied bitterly that they were the ones who abandoned him and chose their current path themselves. The experienced traveler concluded his thought with a bitter remark, recalling a well-known proverb and emphasizing that everything that happened between them or their choice can no longer be changed. After these words, the former comrade completely lost faith in himself, and it seemed that he had nothing left to hold on to. The defeated man trembled with fear and begged for mercy, pleading not to be touched because he had a daughter. He, breathing heavily and admitting his guilt, still tried to justify himself. He said that it was precisely because of his lifestyle that his daughter ended up in a shelter, and he himself was to blame for choosing the wrong path. The man, trying to reach the winner's conscience, asked in a trembling voice whether he could really allow a little girl to endure such a thing. He warned that by taking her father away, he would doom her to the same fate as both of them. The winner, looking at this pitiful scene, only smiled contemptuously and coldly commented on how low the Blood Fang clan had fallen if they were already begging for mercy. The winner replied coldly and reproachfully, asking if the man had ever thought about the girl he once took from his older brother, hinting at his double standards. Finally losing hope of negotiating, the former comrade decided to attack. A dull, heavy blow sounded, and the dispute ended. After that, no one said anything. The winner stood over the body, and in the silence his heavy thoughts were almost audible. He had just killed a man for the first time in his life. He thought that this man was not just anyone, but a former comrade who once stumbled and went too far. The bitterness and weight of what was done still lingered in the air. When the young man woke up, he realized with surprise that he felt nothing at all. He wondered whether it was self-defense or the murder of a criminal. The only thing that troubled him was that he felt no guilt, and he thought that was probably a consequence of everything that had happened. With bitterness and a bit of mockery at himself, he thought that during the fight he behaved like some villain from anime. He pondered the fate of Ban. He noticed that only ashes and something else remained from him. In front of him lay the gloomy severed head of Ban, and now he did not know what to do with it. Essentially, he noticed that carrying the head in a bag was practically impossible. It would start to rot. Therefore, as an option, he suggested salting it to prevent it from decomposing. Suddenly, another idea came to his mind. He remembered vampires and wondered if they could turn people into beings like themselves, possibly seeing it as some kind of way out. Discarding previous ideas, he suddenly found a solution. He said uncertainly that there was a better way. He smiled a little and decided to send Ban, even dead, into the game. It was strange to him because he did not think a person could be placed there, but when the method worked, he rejoiced. He checked the main idea of his plan. All the items he left in the game remained fresh and in excellent condition there. Having made sure the threat was over, he decided that now it was safe to take the egg out of the game for his own purposes. A system window appeared on the screen, offering the interlocutor to buy the Dragon Lord's egg. He remembered that he had kept this egg in his game from the very beginning of the journey, so that it would remain completely safe and unharmed. They heard her happily note that his skill was very useful. Then he also remembered the woman who warned, if anything happened to the egg, he would be responsible for it himself. Aharon assessed the situation, looked around, and silently noted that there were no enemies nearby. At that moment, a large shadow fell on him. The hero did not expect this and raised his head. He hears a loud sound resembling human speech. The main character distinguishes the word human and notices a huge, stretched tail. Behind this voice was a large dragon, who sternly asked the hero if he was the messenger of the king's daughter, trying to understand who he was and for what purpose he came. The dragon asked if Akon had come to return the egg. Seeing the dragon lord himself, Akon became frightened, screamed, and admitted that the egg belonged to the dragon, renouncing all his claims. The Lord of Dragons showed his power by pulling the egg to himself with the force of thought. The man was amazed, realizing that this egg belonged to a very powerful creature. The huge creature turned to the hero. In gratitude for returning the offspring and destroying the vile villains, it promised to give the hero an answer to one question. The dragon began to speak and pointed at the hero. Then he explained why the man he bit crumbled. He was unworthy to mix his blood with the blood of kings. The dragon warned that unworthy people might have monstrous offspring after the hero's bite and advised caution. Finally, the Lord of Dragons spoke his farewell words, addressing the man as the Night King of Bazar. Left alone, the hero was deeply shocked. He became afraid of how much this creature had learned about him, and he was overwhelmed by strong fear. He sighed with relief and fatigue, suddenly realizing how tired he was after everything that had happened. After a long and difficult journey, he finally returned to the capital. In a familiar place, a young girl joyfully called his name. The Kihan greeted him warmly. The girl noted that his journey was full of adventures and sincerely rejoiced that he returned alive and unharmed. She asked joyfully again if it was true that he brought grapes and assured that they would be sold out immediately because buyers had been waiting for a long time. She added that Liberia was also eagerly waiting for these grapes. The Kihan muttered thoughtfully that if he sold a few more boxes of grapes, he could gather enough money for a house, but he did not reveal any further plans. The woman asked if he came today to sell medicinal potions. He replied no and explained that he had another matter. With cold determination in his eyes, the hero declared his true desire. He wanted to personally meet the one who placed the bounty on Benz's head. The Kian suggested meeting with the client who set the reward for the criminal's head. She repeated her question again, and the main hero could not understand why this question surprised her. She anxiously clarified whether he was afraid to meet the noble lady, that is, the client. Saying this, she covered her mouth with her palm so that no outsider could hear their conversation. The adventurer immediately understood where this was going. He decided not to take risks and answered the question with another question. Would he receive the reward? Surprisingly, it worked. The girl arranged a meeting with the customer. The hero asked ironically if this woman really scared everyone here so much. The scene shifted to the guild's reception. The noble lady addressed the hero, who had just appeared, and began the conversation based on the information received. He came to talk about her order. Kian confirmed her words, noting to himself that this woman really looked stern and serious, just as the rumors said. A slight tension hung in the air. Realizing that there was no time to waste on polite talk, he suggested moving straight to business. Opening the box, he reminded her of the order's conditions. The criminal was to be delivered dead or alive, hinting that all requirements had been met. The noble woman's reaction was swift. She did not expect to see the head of the Bloody Blades leader at all. The adventurer nearby exploded with anger. He sarcastically accused Akihan of deception. Allegedly, to easily earn 5 million, he slipped some dead man wrapped in rags and passed him off as Banz's head. Akon remained calm, like ice. If he believed in something, it was already difficult to convince him otherwise. However, he did not like at all that he was accused of lying. Admitting that he had a low rank among adventurers, he asked if they really believed it, challenging them confidently. Seeing that they were uncertain or did not want to argue further, he turned around and said he was leaving. He no longer insisted or explained. He barely began to gather his things and turned his head into the box when he was suddenly stopped. The noblewoman muttered uncertainly that she had no doubts. Her voice trembled. She reached her hands to her head. She took the head in her hands and realized that it was the real head of the bloodsucker bands, so there were no more doubts. When her assistant tried to stop her, the noblewoman coldly apologized for the subordinate's rudeness. After that, she ordered to call a guild representative and declared that she was ready to pay the reward. The woman of noble birth addressed the man in armor and gave an order. If they were not sure, then he and the entire squad would immediately set out to find the real culprit, and until they found him, they would neither eat nor sleep nor drink. Returning to the interlocutor, she added that they would have to bring the head of the one who killed her brother. She was driven only by the thirst for revenge. The main character thought that the aristocrat knew how to instill fear. Meanwhile, the subordinate addressed her, swearing that he had never doubted him, and humbly asked his lady to forgive him. After the meeting, he, together with the guild representative, began to process the documents. The main character was told where to place the seal. When he did this, the agreement was considered completed. After checking all the details, the order was successfully completed. Benda's head was handed over. The worker politely thanked Akon for the completed work. Then she turned to the adventurer and asked him to stay after all the formalities were completed. He agreed. At this time, the noblewoman listened carefully to the conversation and memorized the name of the warrior who brought her the head. Akihan calmly asked the noblewoman if she wanted to add anything else, showing that he was listening to her attentively. Eventually, a noble lady decided to greet politely and warmly, introducing herself as Zella Gantaklasla. She bowed and sincerely thanked him for killing Bloodblade Ban. This moment struck the warrior. He did not think that a person from a noble family could do such a thing. The employee admitted that she did not expect to see Akon on this mission. Akon replied ironically that he could say the same about her. He was also surprised that she was engaged not only in product evaluation. She modestly said that not only she could work today, but other employees were currently unavailable. With an unchanged facial expression, she suddenly added that the bodies of criminals could be considered food products, albeit indirectly. This caused genuine surprise. The worker quickly eased the tension, saying it was a joke, while Akihan wondered mentally why there were so many frightening women around him. She immediately switched to a business tone and suggested Akihan withdraw a large sum of money right away because it was inconvenient to carry it with him. She asked if he had any plans for this money. Sensing his uncertainty, the employee enthusiastically promised to give him useful advice. She proposed creating a financial department in their trade guild, assuring Akihan that his funds would be safe. Ahian realized that this whole conversation was a subtle advertisement for the guild's banking services. Although he was a bit confused, he still smiled and agreed, deciding it was a good choice. The girl literally lit up from his agreement. She enthusiastically assured that it was an excellent decision and he would not regret a single second. Hastily pointing to the documents, the girl explained that he only needed to sign in 2 places. At that moment, the main character remembered something. Focusing intently, he finally remembered. He wants to become an investor for the orphanage and clearly states that he plans to use part of the funds purposefully. In this regard, he offers the employee to help him in this matter. Kihan thought to himself. He honestly admitted that he did not regret killing Ban at all. He recalled how Ban himself said that his daughter lives in the capital in an orphanage, and this convinced him even more of the correctness of his action. Having dealt with his affairs, Aekyon performed all the necessary evening rituals, spent the last 100,000 lin in the game, and soon returned to the hotel. In the hotel itself, the young man felt a slight excitement. He decided to figure it out and internally prepared himself for self-analysis. Having prepared and anticipating the result, he said, "Evaluation." A familiar system window appeared before his imagination. He was convinced his suspicions were confirmed. He really had new skills. Among them were game, day steps, instant, and silent step. He was interested in the new skill, quick step. He remembered that Ban had a similar ability. He then paid attention to this when he stopped hearing the sound of his own steps. He was disgusted to acquire skills at the cost of someone's life. He did not want to turn people into dust for this, so he wondered whether it was worth using his day traveler skill to take abilities from others. Lying in bed, he tried to understand what was happening to him and wondered whether it was a gift or a curse. But the main thing for him was that he finally figured out what was going on with him. His thoughts were interrupted. Aekyon realized that he could not concentrate on sleep. Perhaps he was too tired or overloaded with information, so he could not fall asleep. Fatigue and the desire to rest led him to the thought, what if alcohol helps to fall asleep and forget? With this intention, he decided to go outside. Although he remembered that you could buy something to drink in the game, there was only tea, juice, or soda there. Therefore, if he wanted to drink alcohol, he would have to go and buy it in real life. He remembered drunken delusions when he thought about alcohol. The same name belonged to a very rare berry that could only be found in dungeons, and its juice was used to make the highest quality varnish. He asked the merchant irritably, who had sold almost nothing because of them. Kihan refused to buy snacks in the store because it was more profitable for him to buy food in the game. The seller tried to persuade him to take dried meat along with a drink and assured that everything was available, but Kihan politely declined. On the way, he wondered if alcohol might taste better in the company of friends. He hoped to sit in a bar, drink something strong, and talk to someone, but the bar turned out to be empty. Realizing it was a bad idea, he returned to the hotel feeling lonely. He thought that theoretically he could make wine and liqueurs on his own, using the game stock of grapes and fruits, but he understood that selling too much product could attract unwanted attention to himself. Suddenly his thoughts were interrupted. He barely managed to dodge the sword. The strike was so close that he almost fell. His reaction did not fail. The main character even managed to hold onto the bottle of alcohol. The first thing the main character thought was that some maniac had attacked him. But when the attacker began accusing him, calling him old, and saying that because of him he was kicked out of the group, Aekyon immediately understood. It was Lady Zella's subordinate. The young man pondered and got confused. Could it be true that this man was expelled just because of a quarrel with that woman? Understanding the danger, he decided to turn into a deserted alley to avoid unnecessary glances. Inside him boiled indignation. Could he really be to blame for someone's disgraceful behavior? And could it be that now this person wants to kill him? Seeing that the warrior was fleeing, the pursuer rushed after him, shouting loudly for him to stop. He was very angry at the youth's attempt to escape. Turning the corner, the boy exclaimed to his attacker with surprise and contempt, calling him old, but nothing could be changed anymore. Turning back to the hotel, a window with the player's profile appeared on the screen, where there was now a new skill, provocation. Seeing this, the main character felt uneasy, and a slight fear appeared in his heart. A young man bitterly admitted that he was to blame for what had happened. After all, it was he who decided to test his theory in practice. Thinking about this, he transferred the remains into the game. The system reacted unexpectedly. He received a recipe for a new type of fertilizer. This only confused him even more. Horror and disgust at what he had done completely ruined his mood to drink. Now he was finally convinced. His ability as a daywalker really allows him to steal others' skills, but the price for such knowledge is too high. Suddenly, he had the idea. So as not to leave the alcohol in the middle of the hotel, he decided to take it to his gaming space. Suddenly, a system window with a new task appeared in his game interface. He needed to figure out how to make alcohol. The system hinted that more detailed information could be found on the task panel. He was truly surprised, because after 10 years of playing, it seemed to him that he had completed all possible tasks. Where did this new assignment come from? The task became clear. He had to build a winery near his estate. In return, they promised to unlock recipes for various alcoholic drinks, but special materials were required for construction. The boy quickly realized that he would not be able to get these resources by ordinary means in the game. This meant that he would have to act outside the game itself to complete the task. He suddenly understood this with icy clarity. He would have to go underground. This revelation both frightened him and set him on determination. Several days passed after receiving the new task. The young man returned to selling potions and fruits and resumed training. From time to time, he brought leftover fruits to 3 familiar girls. He irritably realized that he should have started this matter long ago. However, he was aware of his weakness. Due to the lack of clear deadlines, he constantly postponed everything. Inside him, a feeling of regret was growing. He understood that he should have acted earlier, but now that chance was already lost. After some reflection, he made a final decision. He would still have to descend into the dungeon, as the task required it. Suddenly sneezing loudly, Akon, who was holding a joystick, detached himself from virtual reality and looked around. A breeze was blowing in the room. He didn't even notice how it became cool. That was exactly why he started sneezing. The thought of the approaching change of season and the upcoming expedition made him speed up his preparations. He realized that the earlier he started, the better. With renewed determination, he checked his things. Everything was in perfect condition. All necessary items were ready, and the things were neatly packed. He felt completely prepared. His goal was a journey to the city in the west, near which the required dungeon was located. To cheer himself up, he shouted this thought aloud, attracting the attention of passers-by. He shouted it as if to encourage himself, but immediately after felt a slight embarrassment for his words. The carriage moved. The boy mentally estimated that the road to the western dungeon would take about 5 days. Akian pondered how many days he could save on the road, but this time he decided to reach the destination on foot, relying only on his own strength. He ran the entire way. Akihan saw this as a great opportunity to test his endurance and physical strength. He joyfully raised his fist up, confident in the upcoming adventures. In some places, the main character stopped to rest and happily played on the joystick, which he had already gotten used to over such a long time. He realized that he could not truly relax unless he worked hard and sweated. Active training on the road helped a lot with this. The only downside was that during each session he had to sweat heavily. But this did not become a problem. During a break, Akian made an interesting discovery. Everything he put into his gaming space became completely clean, so he quickly cleaned his towel and armor there. However, the items did not get repaired, only cleaned. Despite the long journey, the traveler ate his portion of magical cherries every day to become stronger. He checked his status in the system. His stats had improved. The skill double attack was added to his abilities. Akian realized that daily efforts such as training and consuming cherries yield much better results. Having finished his daily tasks, the man confidently moved on. He felt lighter at heart, but a long road still awaited him ahead. After about 3 days of travel, he finally reached the borders of a new city. The city impressed him with its size and development. Akian, who had already been to the capital, noted for himself that this city was almost on par with it in scale. At first, he headed to the Adventurers Guild. After checking his documents, he was issued a registration card. Now he officially became a bronze-level adventurer. He politely thanked the employee. One of the guild members noticed that winter was approaching and asked Akon if he really intended to go into the dungeon now. The young man confirmed his intentions and inquired whether the season had any significance for the dungeon's features. The employee explained that due to snow and winter, outdoor work had significantly decreased, so more adventurers now went to the dungeon, where the weather does not reach, and it was becoming very crowded there. Based on this, the employee strongly advised Akon to sign a long-term hotel accommodation contract in advance while there were still free spots, and offered a special deal from the hotel itself, which was managed by the guild. The main character noticed that the guild employees increasingly reminded him of cunning consultants from modern stores who skillfully impose various services. Soon he reached the dungeon entrance and saw people entering it. He carefully looked at the entrance. It was a beautiful arch that immediately caught the eye. He also noticed that the dungeon belonged to the local ruler, but was managed by the Adventurers Guild. Ahian recalled that newcomers are always told the rules before their first entry. Also, everyone must show their registration card. His gaze slid over the strict rules hanging on the wall, mandatory card registration upon every entry and exit. At the end, there was a short but noticeable warning inscription, to be careful. Standing by the dungeon gates, the main character was filled with excitement. The dream he once gave up on was finally becoming reality at the moment he was about to step into the unknown. When Akian entered the dungeon, he immediately felt a strange tension and heaviness in his stomach. Inside, everything resembled a tangled labyrinth. Dark, gloomy walls and sounds of battles echoed from all sides, creating an oppressive atmosphere. Despite the initial tension, he felt excitement as he moved forward. He was overwhelmed with emotions. The warrior realized he could not stop and had to keep going. Turning the corner, he heard the sounds of monsters. He cautiously peeked out, trying not to make any noise. He noticed 5 goblins who had not yet seen him. Akihan prepared himself, confident that he could handle them. Encouraging himself, he decided to act from an ambush. Having dealt with the goblins, he breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out to be easier than he thought. The element of surprise played its part. He found it strange when he saw that the goblins' bodies had actually turned into magical stones, just as described in the rules. It seemed unusual, so he began to recall everything he knew about dungeons. Since corpses turn into magical stones, it is a very profitable business. Success inspired him, and he wondered how far he could go into the dungeon and how much he could earn. Understanding that this is a dangerous place, Etchen reminded himself to be careful and not to act hastily, for his goal is not to rush in search of treasures but to act wisely. A strange sign caught his attention, and when he came closer, he realized it was a portal that allowed returning to the entrance of the dungeon, and such portals were on every floor. Asian compared the portal to a save point in a video game. He decided that he had trained enough for today. He appreciated how convenient it was. You could always return to the entrance, and then immediately get back to the same floor you had already reached before. Summarizing the first 4 attacks, which he counted, 5 killed goblins brought him 3,000 lin for magical stones. This amount seemed insignificant to him, so he realized that to earn seriously he needed to go further, into deeper places. He also thought that if there were more monsters, it would be difficult for him to survive alone. His thoughts were interrupted by noisy adventurers. Someone persistently insisted that their team was not suitable for collaboration, but the main character, especially disregarding these words, still decided to move forward. Hearing the address, the grandfather, not wanting new problems after the last adventure, also decided not to interfere and carefully went around the disputants by another path. He firmly decided not to get involved in other people's quarrels anymore. Someone was desperately shouting for help. A young man heard this cry. Although he did not want to get involved in trouble, he felt that someone was hiding behind his back. Meanwhile, one of the attackers got angry and shouted that no one had asked this warrior to intervene. The main character thought irritably why he had ended up in such a situation again. He only managed to notice that those he was protecting had already disappeared. The aggressor, enraged by the interference, attacked him and shouted that if he was looking for trouble, he would get it in full. Achian remarked with regret that he was not even allowed to speak. Realizing that the situation was becoming serious, he sharply caught the fist midair, stopping the blow. He tried to calm the attacker and suggested they part peacefully. The attacker assessed his strength and realized that his fist was clenched so tightly that he could not break free. Therefore, he could only keep a cool mind and retreat. When the conflict was left behind, both sides decided to retreat, and the main character was glad that at least one person heard him. Kihyun returned to the inn. He had a light dinner and went to bed early to prepare for the next day in the dungeon. He admitted to himself that he was very tired. Sleep quickly overcame him, and the carefree night passed unnoticed. The next morning, he was suddenly called. The people who did it seemed unfamiliar to him. It turned out that they were 2 girls, a mage and a priestess, whom he had accidentally helped yesterday. They thanked him for the rescue. One of them remarked in surprise that they had already met the day before. The girls, a little shy, explained that they had been watching him from around the corner. According to them, they wanted to make sure he was strong enough. The main character asked what they wanted from him, still feeling tired and confused after yesterday's events. The girls introduced themselves as a friendly team. There was a mage and a priestess. They immediately invited the main character to join their group for dungeon expeditions, as they were convinced by his actions that together they made a great team. Kihen pondered the proposal to unite with the girls. It seemed to him that at his age it was pointless to expect any changes, but their words about needing reliable protection ahead sounded tempting. Inside him, doubts and curiosity battled. Although Akihan hesitated inside, he politely but firmly declined. But the girls did not give up. They insisted, asking to go together at least once. Akihan sighed inwardly, realizing he was being pressured, but the second time he could no longer refuse. So he agreed, and the girls exclaimed joyfully. They immediately suggested getting acquainted. The girls began to introduce themselves. Misha, who possessed magic, proudly said she was the 3rd daughter of an aristocrat and had come here to gain experience. The second girl, who was a priestess, quietly introduced herself as Sis and said she grew up in a temple. Misha continued explaining. They were from the same city and studied magic together. Roughly speaking, she was an attack mage and Sis helped her with support. She also added that there are two main properties of magic, demonic and holy, and all other magical powers are created when they are combined. Misha explained that pure magic, or divine magic, has a not very good reputation in society. The main character noticed that Sis was a rather quiet person, while Misha was her complete opposite. At that moment, Sis decided to ask the main character's name. The main character briefly told about himself. He was an adventurer in the capital who recently decided to try something new. He named himself Akian. When the introduction was over, the traveler from the capital suggested going underground. Inside, he decided it was better not to talk about his game. The girls, especially Nisha, were surprised by his haste. Akian, already imagining himself at the front of the group, suggested waiting a minute, to which the girls only looked at him in surprise. Akon said that he was running to the tavern to change into appropriate dungeon gear. Returning, the main hero apologized for making them wait. Misha, with a slight reproach, noted that he made her wait too long and called him uncle. The girl noticed his new equipment, a mace and a shield. Misha asked in surprise if he left the spear and other items behind, and reminded him that if he dies in the dungeon, he will lose everything. Kian only smiled reservedly and confirmed that he knew these rules well. He confidently stated that a dungeon awaited him ahead. Walking further, he mentally added that he had already hidden all valuables in the game, so the enemies would get nothing. Over time, a new problem arose. The main hero was used to fighting alone and drew all opponents to himself, and along with that took all the loot, leaving the girls no chance. The first minutes of the joint battle were unusual for Akon. He instinctively blocked the path of all opponents. Realizing his mistake, he apologized guiltily. Over time, he got used to working in a team. With each new dungeon floor, the enemies became more numerous and diverse, and battles happened more often. The team acted coherently. Akon confidently led, told Misha whom to hit with fire, and at the right moment asked Sais to defend. Suddenly, a monster jumps out of the darkness and grabs the real hero by the hand, but he does not panic and skillfully manages. After resting a bit following continuous battles, he finally looks around. Nearby are the bodies of monsters, or rather, only their remains, which are magical stones of various sizes and properties. Ekian was surprised by his changes. Earlier, he would have run away from such a number of monsters without even looking back, but now he stood confidently. The thought of new trials no longer scared him, but on the contrary, excited him. Checking his stats in the game, he compared them with the characteristics of the guild instructor, and here everything became quite clear. His level was already higher than the instructor's. Such an achievement could not but please. Kian descended lower and lower, and with each step felt his confidence grow. Together with the team, they acted coherently. The clashes went like clockwork, and this helped to move forward. Having found the stairs to the 6th floor, the main character suggested resting a little before the decisive push into the depths of the dungeon. Already thinking about the next battle, he looked back. The girls only groaned discontentedly in response. They had no strength left after constant fighting. They bowed their heads and barely moved. Sis, pale and trembling, barely stood on her feet and mentally repeated, "I want to go home." Misha shouted loudly, expressing her indignation, and gripped the staff so tightly that the joints in her hands turned white. The sister began to complain about the goblin's appearance and also said she was tired. Akian, surprised by their condition, asked confusedly if they wanted to retreat. The girls only exchanged glances. Akon quickly assessed the situation. The girls were already at the limit of their strength, but he still had enough energy to continue fighting for a long time. He decided to withdraw, mentally noting that he had already collected enough magic stones and could stop there. Ahian confirmed his thoughts and said aloud that everything was finished for today. Hearing about the end of the expedition, Misha and Sis, though tired, still rejoiced and thanked the gods. During this time, they had become quite exhausted. When they returned to the guild, the worker apologized for the slight delay and gave them the earned money for the magic stones. The amount was considerable. The coins were stacked one on top of another, forming a small pile. When all the coins were counted, the sum turned out to be impressive, 20,000 line each. The girls were pleasantly surprised by such earnings, and the main character also lifted his spirits upon hearing this amount. Akon pondered. He noticed that the deeper they descended, the more and better magic stones they found. He was sure that tomorrow, on even deeper levels, there would be even more, but his thoughts were interrupted. A familiar voice called him. The happy girls, thinking everything was already decided, said goodbye to the main character and suggested meeting again in a week. Their proposal surprised our hero, and he finally came out of his thoughts. The only thing he could respond with was a counter-question, as he was completely confused. His plans for tomorrow were shattered in an instant. Then the main character sharply asked again, why exactly in a week, clearly hoping for an earlier meeting. Misha was surprised and said that a week is not that long. Continuing her story, Misha explained that they needed some time to buy magical materials and replenish their supplies, since mages cannot do without magic, unlike warriors who perform well both in defense and attack. Seeing that he still did not understand anything and was confused, she explained that there are two main ways to study magic, but remembering that he is not a mage, she added sympathetically that perhaps he does not even know about it. The young mage explained that there are two ways to master magic and engrave a magical mechanism in one's mind in the form of a magic circle. The first way is to learn it from an experienced mage. The second is to acquire the necessary components at the magic guild. Ahian remembered how he saw a similar magic circle when he was learning the spell of analysis. Then he did not pay attention to it, but now he begins to understand its essence. She emphasized that after studying the theory, one must practice diligently to use magic automatically, especially when it comes to combat spells that need to be cast quickly and accurately. Training was mandatory. This is why the girls need a whole week. Misha needs time for shopping and magic training, and Sis for intensified prayers in church, because her holy magic depends on the connection with the deity. Without this, they will not be able to work well together. Understanding the essence of their thoughts, he agreed with them. Their arguments were truly objective. Akon remembered how he was walking down the road from the guild. He often saw mages and warriors arguing among themselves, obviously about such organizational issues. Now everything became clear to him. Everything came together into a single picture. Now he had to change his plans, and he wondered whether it was worth just waiting a whole week. Although he understood why the girl decided so, their magic required preparation, so just waiting seemed illogical to him. After thinking it over, Akian cautiously and uncertainly suggested shortening the preparation time. He really did not want to lose a whole week, especially without such effective dungeon raids. The sister firmly objected. She really needed time for prayer. It was impossible to shorten this period. Misha, looking at the priestess, thought the same. The main character realized that the schedule could not be changed or postponed. He mentally weighed all the options. There was no point in adjusting to someone else's inconvenient schedule. Although cooperation with the group was beneficial, such an approach was very tiring, so he needed to find another solution. Suddenly he realized that it was not necessary at all to sit in the hotel and just wait for the two young mages. Having made a final decision, the main character offers them a compromise. He clearly explained the plan. The mages have a week to prepare, as agreed, and meanwhile he himself will explore the dungeon. If by the time of the meeting he no longer wants to go together, it will be their fault. He asked if they were satisfied with these conditions. After this conversation, he, tired, goes up to his room. Meanwhile, it was already dark outside. Lights were shining everywhere in the building. Entering the room, he sits on the bed and slightly raises his head. Tired, he sighs. Today's day exhausted him both mentally and physically. Remembering his adventures, he dreamed of forgetting everything and just falling asleep. He was especially exhausted by the last conversation, when the young mages agreed to the idea of going to the dungeon for a kihan on their own. Although everything ended well, his mood was greatly spoiled by this tense atmosphere. Recalling this conversation, the main character was very upset. He believed that modern youth had become too indifferent and did not respect their elders. Moreover, they themselves demanded something, and he had to meet them halfway. His head was buzzing from tension and unpleasant thoughts that prevented him from concentrating. In such moments, Akian knew a proven way to relieve stress: delicious food. Without hesitation, he took out 20 golden cherries from his supplies. They looked very attractive. At the end of the day, as always, he reviewed his stats in the system window. There was a full list of indicators. He was annoyed that the luck item stubbornly refused to increase. This made him think. Maybe his failures were related to the fact that he often found it difficult to communicate or find common ground with other people. He dismissed these thoughts. Now there was no point in tormenting himself with them. The main thing was that from the very beginning, he intended to explore the dungeon alone. With such determination, he realized, it was time to test his new, long-dreamed-of equipment. Already the next day, he was fully ready. Ekian proudly put on a full set of armor made of pure iron and felt its weight and reliability. It was of perfect quality, without a single scratch. Before entering the dangerous dungeon, the main hero, full of determination, promised himself he would go as far as he could. It was time to challenge himself and test his abilities alone. The main hero stood on the 6th floor of the dungeon, preparing for new trials alone. The stone vaults were shrouded in thick fog, the walls were dark, and a gloomy atmosphere prevailed around. In the distance, echoes of someone's footsteps sounded. During the fight with new goblins, he instantly used the skill Quick Step, avoiding attacks, and immediately delivered powerful double blows with the mace. The protected gloves firmly held the weapon's handle. Now he quickly dealt with monsters, so hunting became more effective than during his first attempt. Magical stones of various colors and sizes lay everywhere. Collecting them was pure pleasure. Several days passed this way. On the third day in the dungeon, Aekyon joyfully noted that the new mace fit him perfectly. Its weight and balance allowed him to deliver strong and precise strikes that pierced even the hardest monster skulls. The heavy iron armor reliably protected the hero from fangs, claws, and even stray arrows. Despite the difficulty of moving in it, skills helped compensate. He remained a true unbreakable tank. Achieving such balance became his true accomplishment. In the dark dungeon, there was only one torch, but that was quite enough because it turned out the main advantage of solitude was not in the armor or even the weapons. Simply, no one disturbed or watched him. He could take a break anytime. The main thing was that no strangers were nearby. Then this place became safe and calm for him. Moreover, his armor could be easily removed because it consisted of separate parts, so nothing hindered him. During the stop, Aekyon first hid the heavy loot, magical stones, in the game inventory. Then, to his delight, he set a luxurious table with treats from the game store right in the dungeon. Only looking around remained. Having enjoyed juicy chicken, the main hero had a hearty dinner and, thanks to these virtual luxuries, went back into the gloomy corridor full of strength. The game turned the harsh adventure into true comfort, which could not but please. After some time he saw huge doors in front of him, next to which stood 2 torches. Although the main character had never seen such before, he had heard about them, so putting everything together, he roughly guessed what it was. He stood before the huge doors covered with eerie runes. Everything suggested that behind them lay the lair of the main enemy. Before him was a choice, to stay here on the floor or to gather courage and enter the boss's door. For a moment he was seized by cold fear, and the thought of escape grew even stronger. He even involuntarily took a step back, gripping the shield tightly. It was a difficult choice that required careful consideration of every step. But the main character immediately straightened up. He had already decided everything for himself. No, he would not succumb to fear. With confident steps, he approached the door and began to open it. The heavy metal door gradually yielded to his strength and began to open. Inside there were many goblins of different kinds. Some held shields, others daggers, and even a few mages could be seen. They were dressed differently too, light armor for those who shoot from afar, and heavy armor for strong warriors. Quickly hiding behind the wall, he cautiously peeked around the corner to assess the situation. The biggest problem was that there were very many of them. Even a team would have difficulty handling such a crowd. So the boy began to think about the best course of action. He tensely realized that since this was the boss's room, these goblins were definitely not ordinary, but had some special abilities. Now the question arose, how to deal with such a large and clearly dangerous group alone. Going headlong was definitely not advisable. A risky thought flashed through his mind. What if his skill of daytime walking worked on monsters? Until now, he had only used it against humans, but could it affect monsters, who are completely different and smarter than humans? Deciding that he had nothing left to lose, Aekyon decided to test his hypothesis. It was a bold experiment on which his fate could depend, but despite all the risks, he dared to act. Focusing on his armor, he activated the skill Day Walker, targeting it at the nearby goblins. The system confirmed the launch, and he could no longer turn back. To his great relief, the protagonist saw that the skill had worked. A sinister aura appeared around him. Aekyon suddenly felt that his armor had become very heavy and hurried to take it off. Holding the helmet in his hands, he decided that it was time for his attack. Complaining to himself once again that this armor was very uncomfortable, he lowered his gaze. His face changed slightly from the traveler's skill. His ears became a bit pointed, and one tooth turned almost into a fang, as if he was no longer human. Suddenly, one of the larger goblins, unexpectedly rushing out from an invisible corner, furiously attacked the hero, forcing him to snap out of his thoughts. A spear passed through his body, piercing the main hero through. He sharply turned his head to the side due to the unexpected attack and mentally noted the brutality of the assault. The blow was strong, causing him to almost fall. However, thanks to the hero's endurance and skills, the blow was felt but not fatal. The character reproachfully remarked that attacking suddenly is impolite. Suddenly taking on a strange form, he confused the goblin who hit him. The next moment the hero hit him squarely on the head, leaving no chance. An unknown creature, probably a vampire, that took over Aekyon's body confidently declared, "Now everyone will see the true vampire power in battle." He emphasized that the true owner of this body will definitely hear this message. After these words, he immediately took action. A loud shout of skills rang out, instantly scattering all the goblins. It seemed they had no chance at all, even if there were many of them. The goblins disappeared one by one. The talking vampire regarded connections with ordinary people with contempt. He said they were beings who govern the very essence of life and seek its strongest manifestations. the vampire insisted that this should never be forgotten. The tone became calmer. The voice said that was all. Then, as if remembering something important, it quickly advised to definitely study magic at least a little. To finish his words, he added, "Only after this will it be possible to understand how to resist her." At that moment, the main character felt relief because he realized he was returning to his body. The skilled day traveler turned off, and Akin realized he had returned to his body. His ears looked as before, and so did his teeth. But even despite this, he felt unrest, and chaos reigned in his head. The hero, stunned by what had happened, could not hold back and exclaimed, "What was that?" He stood in the middle of the room, covered with magical stones that shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow. Kian wondered if his habit of wandering aimlessly during the day was connected to adolescent maximalism. He became curious whether perhaps another personality lived within him, his other side. He admitted that this was the only logical explanation that came to his mind, since this vampire knew much more about vampires and their methods than he himself did. Delving into his thoughts, he began to ponder aloud. After thinking for a while, the main character asked himself whether it was worth contemplating this now, and realizing he had already answered this rhetorical question himself, he continued to think further. At first, he decided to find out exactly which skills, in his opinion, were supposed to appear. To make sure of this, he placed his hand on the magic circle, which responded instantly. A window with the system's status immediately appeared, showing all the necessary information. Strength increased to 105, health to 130, speed became 56, magic rose to 43. But luck remained only 5 points. Besides the usual indicators, Akiana was surprised by the large number of new skills, which made him think that the ability to steal skills probably extends not only to humans. He reviewed one of these skills and was impressed. He even felt embarrassed about this skill. He began to panic, saying that he had no experience in relationships at all, so this ability was useless to him, and he really wanted not to use it at all. He feverishly searched for a way to get rid of this skill, looking around for something that could disable it. Later he sighed with relief. He had indeed found a way to stop the effect of this skill. It turned out it could have been blocked all along. Having dealt with this problem, he realized that the other skills were useful, so he left them unchanged. Then he moved on to collecting magical crystals. They were scattered all over the floor of the room, and this immediately lifted his spirits. After all, he immediately thought of coins. Rejoicing in the future profit, the hero cheerfully shouted something about money and harvest. This work did not tire him at all. On the contrary, it inspired him. Kia looked at the bag that had fallen among the stones. He thought that along with the stones, not just an object had fallen, but some kind of magical find. Therefore, he decided to use his skill of identifying items to find out what it was. Studying the found object, the young man was impressed by its description. He realized that it could store as many things as would fill an entire room and was very pleased with its usefulness, especially considering that in the presence of other people, the game could not be used. Putting on the bag, he realized the size was perfect and decided to immediately try out his newly acquired skills. He had just finished his main tasks. Akihan prepared to cast the fire arrow spell, aiming at the point Misha indicated to him. He mentally identified the target and fired. The arrow shot forward at high speed, leaving a blazing trail behind. Approaching the wall, he saw the difference in preparation that Misha had mentioned. Although the strike damaged the wall, it was aimed not where it hit. He realized that without persistence and adaptation, he would not achieve the desired result. He sighed heavily. Remembering that time, he realized that almost a week had passed since he agreed to meet with 2 mages to explore the dungeon together. He only had to finish preparing for this meeting. Akin thought that it was much more comfortable for him to be alone, but he had already promised, so he could not refuse, and he himself admitted that sometimes company can be interesting. Slightly smiling and somewhat resigned to the situation, he began to prepare to return. Raising his fist and loudly shouting that he was already returning, the hero cheered himself up and headed back to the exit of the dungeon. The road was not the shortest, but it was uneventful. Rising to the surface, the traveler saw an ordinary clear day. Small clouds flew in the sky. Everything in the guild was as usual, so he easily managed to go inside and look around. The main character arrived earlier, so he decided not to wait for the others and start changing the stones himself. Suddenly, he heard a very familiar voice calling him. It was Masha. It turned out they had also come a little earlier. Sighing slightly at the familiar voice, Akian admits he did not expect to see them so soon. Looking more closely, he notices something strange. The main character, without even finishing his thought, is completely bewildered by what is happening. The girl, noticeably embarrassed, began to apologize. She started talking about the group and, stammering, expressed the opinion that it was better for them to part ways. The reason for this was the boy who stood between the mages and was looking at Ahian with pleasure. She confidently declared her choice, saying she would unite with another person. Taking his hand, she hinted to the main character that she would not change her decision. The sorceress had already decided everything. The slightly satisfied boy also apologized that it all turned out this way. It seems he ended up in this team by accident. Aquian, deeply upset and confused, asked why it happened, since he had behaved well. He could not hide his pain and misunderstanding. Sis calmly but firmly explained the reason. Another man looked much stronger than him. These words deeply affected the main character, and her explanation sounded like a final verdict. The main character, his face suddenly changing, realized that arguing was pointless. It would only complicate the situation, especially in front of everyone, so he said he accepted the decision and decided to move on. He smiled and somewhat insincerely agreed with her words, raising his thumb up to show full support. Mari immediately picked up on this idea, adding that Ahyan would understand everything right away too. Without wasting time and not prolonging the conversation, the girl informed that they were heading to the dungeon. The sister also calmly said goodbye to the main hero. Leaving the man alone with his own thoughts, they together went exactly to that dungeon. Left alone, the main hero waved to them a little with a slight smile. When they disappeared from sight, he involuntarily sighed. People who saw this sympathized with him in their hearts. One of the observers, an elderly warrior, seeing the upset young man, patted him on the shoulder and advised not to despair, adding that youth today is too selfish. Akian, a little surprised by such a reaction, quickly replied that he was fine. After thinking it over, he realized that this was even for the better for him. Surprisingly, the main hero hardly felt any surprise. On the contrary, he gained confidence and even joy that one of his problems simply disappeared. The same warrior calmly admitted that he had been in various groups before, but each time everything ended unsuccessfully. The traveler replied that he understood everything, showing as if he had resigned to the circumstances. The warrior looked a little older than Ahian, and a small stubble was already appearing on his face. The man muttered his thought. He just wanted such quarrels not to be arranged in front of everyone. In his opinion, this had already become too banal a tactic. Getting down to business, he approached the merchant and showed him his magic pouch. He offered to exchange the stones for money. Seeing the pouch, the guild employee promised to bring a larger container. Returning, she continued the conversation. She politely asked to put all the stones into a specially prepared container. This container resembled a plate with small sides. It was round in shape, so it held more stones than usual. A moment later, the main hero understood everything and poured out all the magic stones. They neatly fell in a pile, forming a rather large heap. Fortunately, the container held everything and nothing spilled. Seeing this pile, the employee was very surprised. She quickly assured him that everything was fine and the counting would finish soon. She understood that the stones had been collected here for a long time, and Ken did not quite understand why the atmosphere was so tense and thought that probably something had gone wrong. When the counting was finished, the main hero could not hide his surprise. He exclaimed admiringly, impressed by such an amount, and the merchant confirmed, for all these stones, he would receive 600,000 lin, which is 30 times more than after the previous dungeon expedition. When the employee handed out the money, he politely asked the boy to bring more stones next time, because it is easy to get confused with large sums. Akon awkwardly agreed. Suddenly, the main character felt someone's hand on his shoulder. It was unexpected, but the adventurer immediately understood who it was. The same warrior with stubble, who had been watching everything from behind while holding Akian by the shoulder, praised him. He also noticed that the wizards had exchanged a real diamond for an inexperienced youth. Expressing his thoughts about the group, the senior warrior laughed and joked that Akon could simply say he wanted to get rid of these youngsters. The adventurer pondered this and felt much easier now. The main character paused for a moment and quietly exhaled. He realized an unpleasant truth. All his life he had not been accepted in company. This annoyed him a little, but did not upset him at all. On the contrary, it even lifted his spirits. After a hard day, the boy decided to treat himself to a delicious dinner and returned to the hotel. There he ordered a hot dish rice with a juicy pork cutlet on top. Taking chopsticks, he began to eat. He focused on the food, mixing pieces of cutlet with rice, and gradually his bad thoughts disappeared. The air was filled with the appetizing smell of fried meat. After a tasty dinner, the hero continued his affairs. Putting the chopsticks on the empty plate, the traveler gratefully thanked for the meal. Now that the meal was over, he had one more task to do. Returning to his room, the hero lay down on a soft, comfortable bed. The next decision was obvious: time for games. He clearly decided to devote the evening to this. Taking the joystick, he fully immersed himself in the game. The sky gradually darkened, and Akon decided for himself that he had enough inventory for today. He also firmly resolved that tomorrow he would not go to the dungeon, but would spend this night playing games until he dropped from exhaustion. Having made this decision, Akon immediately set about executing his plan. In the morning, it became clear that it was not the best idea. He woke up sleep-deprived, with slight puffiness under his eyes. Having breakfast with a tray, the hero understood that his decision could have been better, but he did not regret it. Choosing a place, he sat comfortably. Since yesterday Akian had eaten Japanese food, today for variety he ordered simple bread and soup for breakfast. Wishing himself a good meal, he decided not to make any plans for the day, but just to have a quiet breakfast at the hotel. Sitting in a cozy atmosphere, he felt the pleasant aroma of food. Enjoying the warmth of the breakfast that warmed his stomach, the boy suddenly heard a scream that drew attention to something in the room. Someone loudly announced that a group called Steel Feather had appeared here. The group consisted of 4 people, 3 men and 1 girl. From their appearance, it was immediately clear that they were not beginners at all. Almost immediately, the voice drew attention to another group of fireblades who had just arrived here as well. They were in armor that protected them from blows. Especially prominent was a tall warrior in heavy armor. It seemed he was the one commanding the entire team. The young man was surprised when he heard the names of both groups. At that moment, he tried to remember where else he might have heard these names. Thinking deeply, Akian continued the story. He had never heard of them before, but judging by the reaction of others, these bands were well known. People nearby were actively discussing these bands with enthusiasm, and someone even suggested betting on which group would be the first to conquer the 30th floor. He noticed that there were attractive people in both groups. He especially liked the girl with steel feathers. She reminded him of Zuru, who once pursued Ban. He wondered who she was and what her story was. The main character realized after some thought that it did not concern him and calmly continued having breakfast. After a while, he finished eating and thanked again for the food. Having left the tavern, he pondered what to do next. Since he had no clear plans, Kian walked past the house, trying to come up with something. The sun was shining outside, and its rays beautifully reflected off the rooftops. Suddenly, he remembered 3 important tasks he had forgotten: to buy everything necessary for magic, prepare for the next descent into the dungeon, and find out what new opportunities and dangers currently exist. Seeing how many tasks were planned, the boy was a bit confused and admitted that there were too many plans. He thought there would be nothing at all, but here were 3 tasks at once. Surprise was written on his face. Akihan decided not to postpone anything else. Having decided where to start, he went to the guild. Approaching the information desk, he decided to ask about the feast. It was about monsters from the dungeon. Upon hearing about the feast, the employee asked him again. Eventually, the hero learned that on the 30th floor of the dungeon, especially dangerous monsters appear, posing a serious threat to those who come alone. He also noticed that the employee's response sounded rather rude to him. She continued her story and added that the current record is the 40th floor, which was cleared by a group called Hero's Sword. Then she advised Akon to join forces with those groups he had recently learned about. They were just descending to the 30th floor. The employee politely added, folding her palms and smiling, that the guild would gladly accept and fulfill his request if he needed their services. The main character understood where she was leading, so, hesitating a little and clenching his fingers, he replied that he would think about it. In fact, he had other plans. Remembering the 30th floor, the boy decided to try to handle it on his own, since he already had some experience. If it didn't work out, then he would officially turn to the guild. Having decided this, he set off in the right direction. After some time, he found the right place. A magic wand was drawn on the signboard. Akon noticed with interest that this was the very magic shop he was looking for. The saleswoman politely greeted the man and immediately understood from his behavior that he was here for the first time. Experience told her this almost instantly. The main heroine agreed with her experienced question. In response, the employee decided to briefly explain what the shop was for and what goods were available here. Akihan listened attentively. The saleswoman briefly explained that in this shop one could not only buy, but also learn various spells. The main character did not make a mistake in choosing the shop. After that, she told in detail about the available magic and handed over a list. She politely warned that the choice of magic depends on the rank and offered to help if anything was unclear. Akon sincerely thanked her. When he was choosing spells, he hesitated for a long time between different options, but finally settled on those he often used in games because it was familiar to him. Having reviewed the list, the adventurer chose 7 spells: light, protection from physical and magical attacks, enhancement of slashing and direct strikes, healing, and antidote. All this cost him a whole 300,000 lins, a huge amount. When the main character learned the payment amount, he was simply stunned. Having paid everything down to the last penny, he finally understood why Frammery mentioned debts for magic. it turned out to be really insanely expensive. The seller warned the young man that creating a magic circle in his consciousness could be painful and said that if the pain became unbearable, he could scream without restraint. The specialist's face suddenly changed. At first he understood nothing, but in a moment everything spun, and Achias could not hold back loud screams from the unexpectedly intense pain, counting seconds in his mind. Enduring all this pain, he went back. Walking down the street, the hero still could not recover from the intense pain and took a deep breath. He thought that he did not expect such a painful reaction and wondered if there were easier ways to learn magic, recalling that this had never happened to him before. Despite the pain having passed, the young man immediately decided to try one of the spells. He joyfully exclaimed that he no longer needed candles and activated the magic of light. Tiny particles of light illuminated the entire room. It was very convenient and practical. Sitting on the bed with a joystick in his hands, Aikian pondered how much he had changed since he became a traveler. His life was now filled with adventures. He thought of something else. He admitted that, although he knows many people in the city, he still feels lonely. A desire appeared in his heart. Will he ever meet someone to simply play with? The next day, the young man went to the training ground. He immediately noticed an unusually large number of people and was surprised by such a lively atmosphere. Hearing a conversation nearby, he decided to eavesdrop. Listening to the conversations, he realized that everyone had gathered to pass the 30th floor of the dungeon. There is nothing more for them to do there for now. Akihan learned that the famous groups Steel Feather and Fire Fang are currently looking for new members. The traveler immediately recalled that these were the same two groups he had recently seen in the tavern. Remembering the conversation in the guild, the hero quickly understood what it was about. A quick thought flashed through his mind. What if he tried to join them since they were already looking for people? But he immediately doubted, would those guys really dare to storm such a dangerous level? His gaze fell on the announcement, where the conditions for joining the groups were probably indicated. Seeing the familiar trio of mages and the boy, Akian immediately came up with a plan. Just imagining that he might join the girls who had pushed him away, he immediately felt an inner protest. He firmly decided for himself that he would not take part where they were, and, convinced of his decision, he went on. He did not want to train in front of everyone at all, so he went back to the hotel by himself. Akian wanted to prepare well for the next day. He emphasized that the main advantage of loners is the ability to manage their time as they wish, so he immediately got down to business. The next day came. The weather was, as always, clear and small clouds stretched all the way to the horizon. Approaching the familiar entrance to the dungeon, Akian firmly decided that it was time to explore it. Entering inside, he sincerely hoped that this time it would be without adventures. Making sure there was no one around, the adventurer activated the skill Bloody Transformation. Usually, warriors cannot wear heavy armor because of its weight, but thanks to the vampire's strength, he can easily wear it without problems. He gladly noted that in this form no one would recognize him for sure. Now, fully protected by armor, he was ready to enter the dungeon. Entering the dark corridors, he immediately used the light spell. Thanks to this magic, it became much easier to move forward. Akian resolutely set his mind to go further, using all the recently acquired magical skills. Now he was moving much faster. When he met the first monsters, he immediately cast the spells Strength, Slash, and Protection from physical attacks on himself. Thanks to this, he became much faster at destroying monsters, and they could hardly injure him anymore. After the room was quickly cleared, there was one last task left. The adventurer decisively pointed his finger at the monsters. Suddenly, a black substance resembling a needle began to flow from his finger. Akon quickly crouched and touched the killed monster with the needle. At the last moment, before the creature disappeared, he used the skill that allows stealing abilities, hoping to gain its skills. After successfully using the skill, a system window appeared on the screen. He saw how his character's stats had changed. Among other things, he noticed a new spell, Light Orb. Feeling somewhat lucky, he went further. Feeling relieved, he realized that he did not want to drink the blood of his enemies directly from their bodies. He was pleased that the blood armor worked as it should. He decided not to focus on one skill and decided to try new techniques on the next monster. Firmly holding the sword, he went deeper and deeper into the dungeon, confidently moving forward. Kihan already saw his prey in his imagination. Moving further, he noticed with concern that he had already gone quite far, but the descent to the next level was still not visible. Could this floor really be larger than usual? The adventurer was confused. Suddenly, a loud, piercing scream sounded nearby. It was completely unexpected. The protagonist even flinched a little. Akiyun clearly did not expect this. He thought in surprise that he had never heard anything like it and did not understand at all where the sound was coming from. Preparing for a possible fight, the knight in armor gripped the sword hilt even tighter. Akon cautiously moved toward the direction from which the strange sounds came. He was seized by a terrible cold when he saw the approach of a dark shadow. He could only quietly mutter in shock and disbelief, not understanding what kind of unknown threat it was. Quickly assessing the situation as a chance to acquire a new useful skill, he immediately prepared for battle, realizing that an unfamiliar and still unknown opponent was before him. Realizing that Euclidean would not pass him by, and that hesitation could cost him the reward, he suddenly sped up. His only thought was to get to the place as quickly as possible. In the dark dungeon, only his hurried, heavy footsteps could be heard. When he came closer, he noticed a young girl standing in a fighting stance with a long sword in her hands. Opposite her, something hovered in the air, resembling a ghost and a skeleton in a dark cloak, the hero guessed. It was a devourer holding a scythe in its hands. The young girl's condition was very severe. She barely stood on her feet. It seemed she had been fighting such a monster for a long time, and in this battle, the monster, which resembled death itself, was winning. The girl could not believe she might die right here. The hero recalled everything he knew about this monster, the punishing devourer. He remembered that this creature appears only when someone grossly violates the dungeon rules, for example, staying on one level too long. Looking more closely, Acheon, who was hiding behind the corner, finally saw the monster in all its terrible glory. The adventurer held his breath in fear, seeing the creature with net weapons looming over the girl. Seeing the devourer preparing to deliver the final blow to the girl, the main hero instantly grabbed her and shielded her from the attack. A single strike from this creature almost knocked him out. Even a knight in heavy armor could not believe how strong this being was. Examining the damage, he noticed a considerable dent from the blow. The heavily armed knight could hardly believe that someone could inflict such powerful harm. Suddenly, his gaze stopped on the girl he had managed to grab. To his surprise, he recognized in her the girl from the group with the steel feather, whom he had seen earlier in the tavern. He could not understand how or why she was here. After all, she was alone, without her group, which was supposed to go to the 30th floor. Finding himself between a terrible monster and a girl in his arms, the adventurer was completely confused. The only thing that flashed through his frightened mind was what to do now. The main character was confused. Questions kept spinning endlessly in his head. How did he manage to stop the monster's attack if even she, a member of the elite group, couldn't do anything? After all, he just wanted to explore the dungeon to level up. His thoughts were interrupted by the devourer. He involuntarily let out a muffled scream, reminding the hero of his presence. The knight in armor sharply turned around and realized that fighting with a girl in his arms was inconvenient, so he decided to act. He carefully laid her on the stone floor, never taking his eyes off the approaching hungry monster. Shaking himself, he sharply stopped the panic attack. No, now is not the time for doubts. He must act. Not a second can be lost. He focused, trying to activate his daywalker skill, hoping it would help him deal with the terrifying monster. Everything worked. His face changed shape again. But at that moment, Akon was seized by confusion. Why didn't he disconnect and switch places with the ghost as usual? The last time he used this ability, another creature appeared and took control of his body. Seeing the Sith leading the devourer towards him, the main hero quickly pulled himself together and prepared for battle. In the dungeon, a terrible scream rang out again. The devourer changed its target and was now moving straight at him. A dreadful fear struck the hero's mind. So he would have to fight this nightmare himself. Pausing for a moment, he drew his sword and prepared to strike. Acheon took a position. Although he hesitated at first, fear quickly turned into determination. He firmly promised himself to do everything he could. He lunged forward, activated the so-called power attack, but his weapon simply passed through the monster, causing no damage. Suddenly it occurred to him, this is a spirit or a ghost. Ordinary strength won't help here, he must act differently. The only way out is to use magic. He instantly cast a spell of protection against magical attacks on himself. The following idea came to his mind. He wrapped the blade of his sword with magical energy, focused, and the blade flared with magical flames. When he struck, he hit the monster's tail and cut it off. The strike was successful. He was filled with confidence. Now this monster would fear his weapon like fire. With such confidence, he continued the attack. He rushed forward, shouting that the monster had nowhere left to run. Suddenly, Akihen noticed something. He reacted instantly, using lightning step. He stepped back, straightened up, and focused. He barely managed to dodge the black smoke billowing from the monster. It was the same poisonous gas cloud that dissolves the body in seconds. His rescue was a true miracle. The hero reacted instantly. Determination flared with new strength. If so, he would stop it with one strike. He gathered all his will and magical power, simultaneously activating a whole set of spells. Last, he used the light spell. This spell was very unpleasant for the monster, and it immediately lost concentration. Akon immediately took advantage of this opportunity and began delivering blow after blow. Each strike was precise. Thanks to this, the hero was able to quickly overcome the poisonous gas as he had planned. Seeing what had happened, the main hero exclaimed joyfully. Looking around, he wanted to make sure he had completely destroyed the monster with the scythe in the cloak. When he looked back, there was nothing there. No stones falling after someone's death, nor the body itself, only an ordinary empty stone floor. The traveler was upset to see that nothing had dropped from such an enemy. Moreover, he bitterly added that it was impossible to even drink its blood because it was just a ghost. Suddenly, he remembered the girl from Steel Feather, who was unconscious. She was still breathing, but it was clear that she was very ill. She needed to be urgently taken to a safe place and given first aid. Carefully taking the wounded girl in his arms, the adventurer hurried to the exit of the dungeon. He thought it was not very convenient to carry her, but this way they would get out of the dangerous place faster. When he reached the surface, he immediately took the rescued girl to the guild directly to the healer so she could receive the necessary help. Thanking the staff member, he returned to the hotel. When the hero finally got rid of the burden of responsibility, he felt incredible fatigue. He simply lay down on the bed to rest and recover. He spent about 3 days in his room, resting and regaining strength. When he finally felt better, he went to the dining hall and politely wished himself a good meal. During breakfast, he thought, being alone is certainly not bad, but it would be much more fun to eat with someone else. His thoughts were interrupted by a conversation at the neighboring table. Someone said that Ilaria from the Steel Wing had almost died recently in the dungeon. One visitor asked if the girl had been saved, and another assured that she had survived. The first interlocutor nodded and added, "Someone carried a girl out of the dungeon on his back, and now that guy is being actively searched for." Akon immediately realized they were talking about him and became alert. The second interlocutor asked what was known about this guy. The guest enthusiastically answered the question, saying that the hero was a brave adventurer in heavy armor who single-handedly defeated a dangerous devourer. Hearing this, the hero mentally understood that she was looking for him. Then the interlocutor pompously announced that this hero had already been given a nickname, Iron Bastion. Hearing this, the main hero barely restrained his indignation and surprise at such a loud and amazing name. The boy almost choked on his food upon hearing his new nickname. In his thoughts, he shouted indignantly, not believing that he had been given such a ridiculous name. He was gripped by panic. He realized that Hadalari had been conscious all this time and had seen everything, and the nickname Iron Fortress was given to him because he carried her from the dungeon to the guild infirmary in heavy armor. He tried to pull himself together and calm down. The main thing, he thought, was that she did not see him trying to use the power of the Daywalker. This secret remained with him. Ilaria, who suddenly came in, noticed that the rumors had already instantly spread throughout the city. The conversations around only added fuel to the fire of rumors. Now everyone was looking for the Iron Fortress, and Ilaria was simply burning with the desire to find her. No one would refuse to see the one who single-handedly defeated the terrible devourer. His worst fears came true when he saw Ilaria questioning tavern visitors if they had seen the Iron Fortress. She was really looking for her. Realizing that he was at risk of being exposed, Achion decided to flee immediately before she noticed him. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice calling him. To his relief, Ilaria directly asked if he had seen the adventurer in heavy armor. From her voice and facial expression, it was clear that she did not recognize him. This helped him a lot. He quickly replied that he did not know. To avoid being recognized, he even looked away to the side. The protagonist, not forgetting to apologize and glad to have remained unrecognized, hurried to move on. As he walked, he felt true relief because everything was fine with Ilaria. He felt lighter at heart knowing that he had managed to heal her a little in the dungeon, although he worried that it might not be enough. But the thought of that nickname did not give him peace. He was angry with himself again. Iron Bastion did not suit him at all. Thinking over the situation, he admitted that he liked fights in heavy armor, but now, to avoid attracting attention, it was better to temporarily give them up. Deciding to act, he realized, as long as no one knew his face, everything would be fine. He had already prepared completely new clothes for himself and tried not to think about the possible consequences of such an act. Soon he proudly began to evaluate his work. Now he felt completely protected. He replaced simple iron with strong steel for the armor and added a large, impressive shield to the set. But looking at himself in the new form, he was overwhelmed by a bitter understanding. In this strong, shiny steel armor, with a huge shield, he resembled even more the very Iron Fortress that everyone was so diligently seeking. The young man reached the 17th floor of the dungeon, where an even greater danger awaited him and mysterious sounds resembling rhythmic beats. Continuing to clear the dungeon, he noticed that there were many more different types of enemies here than on the upper levels. Earlier, he had encountered only one or two, but now their number had significantly increased. But feeling protected in his new steel armor, and with a large shield, he only snorted disdainfully, considering these monsters easy prey. The thought of new opponents sparked his interest, and he had already begun to guess what unique skills he could borrow from them to add to his collection. Thanks to his skill of stealing abilities, he gained new skills for working with an axe, spear, and shield, and immediately realized that they were very useful. During this, he made an important discovery. If you acquire the same skill from monsters of the same type, the skill development does not progress. But if you steal this skill from a monster of a new species, the skill level immediately increases. He noticed that up to the 20th floor, the types of monsters hardly changed. Because of this, to level up his skills, he had to seek out and defeat different creatures. Inspired by new discoveries and opportunities, he decided not to delay and immediately headed to the boss on the 20th floor. At first, the boss's tactic of constantly calling allies for help thoroughly exhausted the adventurer. But he did not panic, recalling the classic role-playing game tactics. Focusing on the source of the threat, Achaean skillfully destroyed it. Despite all difficulties, the knight and heavy weapons helped to achieve victory. He sat down and gathered skills from the fallen enemy. Good thing he did not forget the classic techniques he learned during long training sessions. First, he needs to destroy the summoner, and then everyone else. For defeating the boss, he received a valuable trophy, the general's great bow, which significantly increased the range of his attacks. He was sincerely happy with such a find. This weapon will be a great aid in improving his shooting skills. After an exhausting battle and long wandering through the floors, his stomach was loudly growling and he was very tired, so he decided to take a break as he was quite hungry. Returning to the surface and dreaming of a good rest, he happily began to think about lunch. Hot soup, a sandwich with bacon, lettuce, and tomatoes, and something tasty for dessert. This delicious thing turned out to be a dicapon, a fruit that resembles an orange. Achaean pulled it out on his outstretched hand and admired this beautiful, fragrant fruit.